Hello and welcome to this video on Tableau for Sport and this first video in the series on just how to get started. Okay, so we're going to connect to a file, we're going to fire up Tableau really for the first time. So start at the very start and explain just some of the key features within the software. And we'll finish with building a very simple, a very straightforward dashboard. But this video is really just about getting you started along the way. So first of all, I'd like to say if you're a student, you can get a free version of Tableau. So Tableau offer student licenses, so for a year for free. And you can just type in tableau.com student license and it will bring you to this page where you can sign up and get a free license. So really encouraging students and people who want to start like that. If you're not a student, there's still a version you can download and use called Tableau Public. So simply pop your email address in here and you can download the app. The restriction here, there are a few restrictions within the software, but the main restriction is you have to save to something called Tableau Public. Again, which is fine. We're going to use publicly available data here in a lot of this. And from a learning and development point of view, that's absolutely fine. Again, free license that you can play around with, available for both Windows and Mac. In terms of the data that we're going to use, it's kindly provided by StatsBomb. So StatsBomb release a set of data, made available on their Academy page on their website. They also offer online courses, but you can see here you can sign up to receive free data. And they have a lot of data that covers the women's game, last World Cup, and what we're going to use here is the Champions League finals. So they've gone back over the last 10 or so Champions League finals. We're going to take one or two of these and just have a look at those. You don't have to know a huge amount about football to follow along here. It's more the principles of analysing the data. But if football isn't for you and you want to explore some other data sets, I'd really encourage you to check out a website called SportsViz Sunday. So this is where they publish a set of data, usually once a month, and they kind of set a challenge where people build some visuals around sports data. So for example, if I click on the monthly challenge tab here, you'll see the most recent one for June 2020 is a lot of NBA shots, nearly 5 million shots in this data set. It's a really, really nice data set to play around with. Has some XY data, has loads of player information, that kind of stuff. So you can really dig into that. So it's really, really nice to get stuck into that. But they've loads of other data for other sports. So you can come along here, you can see football, Formula 1, tennis, rugby, cycling. So that's a nice place to start if you're just looking to get your own data. Or obviously if you have your own data already from whatever team or that you're involved in, you'll be able to hopefully apply these principles to that. So let's jump into Tableau itself. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm using Tableau 2020.2. Nearly forgot what year it was. 2020.2. Almost everything I will apply to recent versions as well and that kind of stuff. So it should be applicable across a range of versions if you have them, and also if you're watching into the future, whatever version you're on next. So when you land on the homepage here of Tableau itself, this is the desktop application that I'm using here. If you're using Tableau Public, it might look slightly different. You won't have the same access to some of the data sources. But again, for the purposes of this tutorial, everything should be there that you can follow along. On the right hand side, links out to training videos and some blog and resource articles that Tableau create. In the middle are your pinned workbooks, so this might be blank the first time you use Tableau, which is fine. You've got some sample workbooks down at the bottom, and I'll also share some links and stuff in the comments in the video below to some other dashboards that you might want to check out that are sports related. And then on the left hand side here you have the connections to data. So Tableau starts by being able to connect to a sample file or a file and then being able to manipulate that data to create your charts, etc. So Tableau can connect to almost any type of kind of data file. It's broken into a couple of sections here on the left hand side. So you'll see to a file. These are local files that are stored on your computer. So Excel, text would be a CSV file, JSON files, and so on, so on. Even PDFs in certain cases it can connect to. The next set is to connect to a server. So these would be files that are stored on a database, either within your organization, or it could be even external databases. And if I click on the More button here, you'll see that it opens up the full range of connections that Tableau can connect to. Okay, so things that might be useful if you're starting out is Google Sheets has a connector here. So if you're storing stuff centrally within your club or your organization, Google Sheets is a great way to have those collaborative files, and Tableau can connect to those directly. But you'll see, Microsoft SQL Server and some other database connections. These are all the most popular ones that most organizations would use. For this tutorial, we're going to use an Excel file, and I will make this available in the comment below so that you're able to download and follow along. So I'd suggest if you do want to follow along, you get that file now. And again, just to say thanks very much to StatsBomb for allowing me, for one, publishing the data, and two, allowing me share this with you. So I'm going to click Microsoft Excel, and I have a file here called Champions League Finals. So I'm going to double click on that. Take a couple of seconds just to load for the first time. So Tableau is just going off to that Excel file, generating the connection. And the important thing to note here is that it's not loading the data necessarily into Tableau, it's just connecting to that underlying file. So if the data in the file updates, the report in Tableau will also update. So here we are now, and we've connected to the data. So when you connect to an Excel file, it will list all of the sheets within that Excel file. Okay, here on the left-hand side. So we're going to start with the 2019 Champions League final. So I'm just going to drag that sheet where it says to drag tables here. So drag the sheet on. And what we should see is a preview of the data in the bottom half of the screen. And this will be about 1,000 rows of data, and it'll just give you an idea or a sample of the file you're looking at. Now, we don't need to spend too much time on this screen, but just to explain, each row here is an event. So we can see, the match ID, the match date, the home and away team, the event type, in this case, 50-50, event ID, the outcome. And as I scroll across, you'll see there's, nearly 100 columns here with different data points in it. We've got the location, where the event happened. We've got the player that was involved, the position that player played in the match. And if I go all the way to the end here, there's some details. So this was an event for Liverpool at that particular time in the game. And again, the type name or the event name is there. Okay, and there's some other details. So you'll see, depending on the event, this one was done under pressure and so on. So there's all sorts of various outcomes within this data set, which is great. Okay. Now, this particular data set is row by row, event by event. Depending on the system you use or where you get your data from, it might look slightly differently. Obviously, every data set's going to be a little bit different, so just keep that in mind. But I will make this file available to download, so you're able to follow along here. So let's go to sheet 1 at the very bottom. So the first sheet 1 there creates that blank sheet, and this is the kind of main interface that you'll be using within Tableau. On the left-hand side here, it lists all of the column headings. So you see all of these column headings. At the moment, they're listed alphabetically. And if I scroll all the way to the bottom here, you see all my events or all my columns are listed, and it generates this count. And the count is basically a count of the rows. So it's something that Tableau automatically creates, but it's going to help us here with adding up all of these various events. So the idea here is just to build something really simple just to get us started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take type name and drag it to the rows. And I'm going to take the team name and drag it to the columns. And you can see now I have a little bit of a table going on here. Okay, so we've all the events that are tagged by StatsBomb. We've got the 2 teams involved in the match. And now I can use this count field here. And I can drag that out and onto the ABCs here, and I should get a nice table that tells me how many events were across each team for each event type. Okay, so it's a really simple table just to get us started. And I have to say, generally, when I'm building a Tableau workbook, one of the first sheets I'll build is this kind of overview table. It means if I want to validate any numbers, check that the file is right, there's no discrepancies in the data, it gives me a nice kind of overview just to be able to check the kind of headline numbers. So I can see, Liverpool made 300 passes, Tottenham made over 500 passes here. Okay, so this is our kind of first sheet. So I'm going to come down here and I'm just going to double click and call this summary table. And there's no need to do this. It's just something I do as best practice. The other thing to keep in mind, again, depending on the data set you have, what Tableau does is it splits your column headings into two sections, and they're now determined by this dividing line here. So above the line will be your text and your date fields. So anything that's a text, like a player name, that kind of stuff, should be up here. And anything that's a numeric value will normally be in the bottom section. Now we'll come back to this in some other tutorials, and we'll look at why we might need data to be moved around here. And it is something you can move around, but just to be aware of that kind of split. Anything above the line will be what's known as a blue pill. So you see it creates this kind of blue shape, and anything below the line makes a green pill shape. Okay, and you see when I drag them out, my type name and team name are blue, and my count here, because the numeric field, is green. So let's create another sheet, another chart. And that's the best way to think about it, is each sheet becomes its own chart or its own table that you want to create. And then we'll bring these together into a dashboard. So let's take my team name this time onto the rows. And we'll take player. So there's a player name field here. So I'm going to put that on the rows as well. So you can see now, I can see the breakdown of which team and then which player. If I was to swap those around, put player name first, you see it would list the players in alphabetical order, and then it would tell me which team. But it's kind of hard to see, so I prefer the other way around. And again, I'm not too interested in breaking down which events for now. So what I'm going to do is just drag this count. And instead of just creating a table, this is kind of a wall of numbers here, is I'm going to put the count onto the columns. So now you can see, for example, when I hover over Allison, I know that he was involved in 93 events. Okay, Danny Rose was 153, and it looks like Vertonghen had the most of 229 events. Now we don't know which type of events, passes or headers or clearances or anything like that. We can get to that now in a second. So a couple of things just to tidy this up, make it a little bit more visually appealing, is let's put team name onto color. So in the middle section here is our kind of a design elements. Let's click on color and edit, and we can make Liverpool red, and Tottenham I'm going to make this kind of grey. So the white won't look great. So we can have this distinguishing color between the two teams, so it's a little bit easier to pick up there. The next thing is I want to turn on the labels here. So rather than having to hover over the bars to see the numbers, I'm going to turn on the labels. A couple of different ways of doing it, but here I'm going to drag count again from the measures here, the left hand side, onto label, and it's now put the numbers against all of the bars. Lastly, I'm going to sort this, so it's a little bit easier to see from top to bottom. So I'm going to click on the sort icons up here along the top, just under the server, the word server. There's two sort icons, and I'm going to sort them from most to least within both teams. Okay, so now it's much easier for me to spot who had the most involvements all the way down. So let's double click and just call this our player events. Okay, so we now have this breakdown between the overall team summary and we know the players. But I don't really know, as I said, what Vertonghen was involved in here. And that's what we'll do now with a dashboard. So to create a dashboard, I'm going to use the second plus along the bottom. Second plus along the bottom. And you can see the interface changes here a little bit. I said we're going to keep this really simple for this tutorial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out my summary table. And then I'm going to drag out my player events sheet that we've made. And just be aware as you drag this on where this grey box appears. So if I was to place it here, it would go underneath the table. If I undo that, If I place it on the right hand side, it goes to the right of the table. Okay. So I'll just get rid of the color legend there. And you can see now I've got my table of events on the left, and I have the player breakdown here on the right hand side. So the next step I want to do is I want to be able to get these two tables to talk to each other. So for example, I'd like to be able to click on the passes and maybe find out who made the most passes for Liverpool. Or click on ball receipt, for example, find out which player received the passes, which players received most passes. And to do that, I'm going to click somewhere on the summary table here. So you get this gray outline box around it. And I'm going to click on the third option down in the top corner here. There's a little funnel or a filter icon. And what that means now is this sheet here is going to act as a filter for the one on the right. So if I click on any number or word here on the left, it will update the table on the right hand side. So see who made the most passes, click on the word pass, and I can see that Vertonghen made 78 for Spurs, and Robertson made 54 for Liverpool. Okay, anything now, so I can click on the blocks, who made the most blocks, who made the most fouls. I could even just look at Liverpool, so ball receipt for just Liverpool by clicking on the 305. I can see that most of the time was played to Mo Salah. Okay, so really simple, straightforward dashboard just to kick us off. And we can see how easy it is just to pull something together like that. Now, the big advantage I see that comes from this is, suppose we'd spent a lot more time, which we will do, designing something much nicer and maybe much more informative, and we play another game next week and we want to analyze the same thing. The key is we don't have to rebuild this. We can just add the game either to this existing file and just update it that way. So what I'm going to do is, to show you that now, is I'm going to go back to the data source tab. And I'm going to simply drag this 2018 file, so the Champions League final in 2018. I'm going to drag that out, and I don't want to just drag it so I get this kind of noodle shape here. I'm going to drag it until I see this union box appear. So I'm going to drag it, on top of the existing file here and put it into the union box. So that's a solid orange color. Now the icon changes to show me this is a union, and this is like stacking one file on top of the other. So imagine you've 50 games in a season and you just want to merge them all into one master file. You don't have to do that in Excel. You can create that kind of master file template here within Tableau. Okay, so if I go back to summary table now, we're going to see a couple of different things. So we're going to see another team added first of all. So now we've got Liverpool, because they were in both finals, they're listed there. Real Madrid, Tottenham Hotspurs. Okay, couple of things I could do. I could make this into so I've got match ID here. I could add that to the columns. And you can see now now the match ID doesn't necessarily mean anything, but you can see Liverpool Madrid in this final, that's how the numbers appeared. And Liverpool Tottenham in that final, that's how the numbers appeared. Okay, or I could right click on the match date here and show filter. And this could then become a filter, so I can switch on whichever game that I want. So I can show all games in a season to get a season's worth of summary data, or I could hone in on a particular game. Okay. I'm going to finish here. I'm just going to show you very quickly. So I'm going to click on the match date here in the filters box. I'm going to apply to worksheets. I'm going to say apply to all using this data source. Okay. So let's say I select 2018. You'll see now when I go to my player events, it's Liverpool and Madrid. So let's jump back to our dashboard and let's just add that last filter in here. So the manager or coach or even yourself using this dashboard could now use it for a multiple of games. So I'm going to click on the little drop down here in the summary table, go to filters, and we'll say match date. Okay. Now again, we'll come back and design something that looks much nicer, but from a functional point of view, I can now click to show all the games, or I could just single select on one of the games that I want to look at. Okay, so imagine this scale to 20, 30, 40, 50 games. You build a report once, and all you ask is Tableau to keep updating with the new data. All right, so it's the first video in our series as a kickoff. If there's anything you'd like me to cover, you can reach me on Twitter or drop a comment in the comment box. But I will do a kind of series of these to get people up and running with Tableau from a sports data perspective. So thank you very much.